Hello there, welcome to my series about teaching you how to use Hammer. With Source 1 being basically left behind in favor of its younger brother Source 2, and with documentation being rare in the modern day, I thought why not make a series for people who want to get into developing stuff within this engine. This series will be mainly using Half-Life 2 and Counter-Strike Global Offensive as the example, since one's the oldest version of the engine and one's the newest version of the engine. However, this series will have dedicated videos talking about important aspects of certain games though. Most of the things I'll mention in this series are applicable to every non-third-party Source game. However, if you still need help with anything, the Valve Developer Wiki is there in the description for you. Anyway, let's get into the installation. First things first, we gotta go install any Valve Source game. For this example, I'll be using Half-Life 2. Open its install folder by going to the game's properties and clicking on Browse Local Files. Once there, you can go to the bin folder and open up the Hammer Editor. These games don't only have the Hammer Editor installation, it actually just comes in by default. But do keep in mind that other games need something called authoring tools or an SDK to be installed in order to use Hammer, since it's not there by default when you install the game. So if you're making maps for games such as Portal 2, Left 4 Dead 2, or Counter-Strike Global Offensive, you will need to install their authoring tools and or SDK. To install these, just go to your library and install the authoring tools for the game you need them for. Oh, and by the way, if you're trying to access the SDK for Counter-Strike Global Offensive, you need to buy Prime status in Counter-Strike 2, since that game replaced it. So if you don't have that in your Steam library, go buy that and then install it. I think it's dumb, but it is what it is. Also, if you choose to make a desktop shortcut, make sure to have the shortcut using the version of Hammer that's in your game folder. I even have made special icons for you to use to help differentiate each shortcut, if you decide to map for multiple games like me. So if you think you need them, go in the description and download them. That's how you install normal Hammer. However, you should not use it. Why, you might ask? Well, there's simply better tools than the stock editor that the game comes with or its SDK. Most notably, Hammer++. If you're even remotely serious about making cool maps, download this shit right now. How, you might ask? Well, step 1 is to go to the website in the description and download Hammer++ for your game. I will be using Half-Life 2, however all of them are on the website. Then, extract the .zip folder along with dragging and dropping the contents of the folder into your game's install directory. Yeah, it's actually that easy. Okay, now that we've installed the software, let's go over the interface and change some of the settings, which we should do before making stuff. However, here's a quick overview of the UI right now without a map loaded. While these tools don't have icons right now because there's no map loaded, these all have hotkeys, so you don't have to click on them every single time you want to use a different tool. You should glue these hotkeys on screen into your head right now. However, when I introduce these tools, I will try to reiterate them constantly so you remember these hotkeys. On the top, we have our modifiers and grouping tools, and on the right, we have more tools and options to use. We will go over these later, but you can move them by dragging them to your desired location. Although most people use the default and occasionally switch it up depending on what work they are doing. Anyway, I won't go over what these tools do just yet, because I think it's easier to teach you guys about them when you need them rather than overloaded with information right now. That, and this video is about setting up Hammer itself, which you're technically done, but I'm going to talk about some settings you should be using that will ideally make your experience better. These settings are in the Tools tab at the top left of your screen under the Options button. You will see this screen here, but do not fear, I will help you out here. First, you'll want to be in the General tab and increase your undo levels. This is something that could increase your RAM usage, but it's worth it in the long run, because if you make a change to your map only deciding you do not like it, this will help you revert by pressing Ctrl-Z to revert all the changes you did. For the 2D section, we're going to check 3 of the settings here. Default rotations to 15 degrees, arrow keys nudge selected objects/vertices, and automatics infinite selection in 2D windows. The first one simply defaults rotating objects to 15 degrees. Because the Source engine is not like oddly rotated brushes, I recommend turning this on. These other 2 settings are personally what I use, however the infinite selection option is more of a personal preference if anything, as it makes it so when you select stuff in bulk in the 2D grid, you don't gotta press enter to confirm. Arrow keys nudge box just makes it so you can move objects on the grid with the arrow keys and vertices using the vertex tool. And finally, let's change some settings in the 3D view tab. We are only going to change the draw distance for models and detail. However, this is dependent on how good your computer is. I personally have a Ryzen 7 5700X 3D and RX 7800 XT, so I have this at a pretty high value. However, if you feel lag, I'd lower these to an amount that you feel comfortable with. I know some people out there who have worse hardware or possibly can't afford better hardware because their economy's in shambles, so these settings are for you. I'd also recommend you increase the back clipping plane as far as possible. This is essentially the render distance of the map in the editor. It will not affect the compilation process of the map at large. You could also feel free to change the camera navigation speed if you want. Right now I have it at the default value, however if you want to modify these and play around with them, then be my guest. Anyway, that's all that needs to be said in this video. There will be more videos in this series, but I do work slowly and do this in my spare time, but I swear I will work on them as fast as I can. I'm already at work on the next one as I'm writing this. Either way, if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next one where I go over some commonly used tools and how to make your first map in Hammer.